Good evening, you're watching No Spin and I'm Nidhi Razdan. Our big focus tonight is the big political story of the week. Will star poll strategist Prashant Kishor be joining the Congress? He's already given them a presentation for how they can revive the party. And we also know today that he's going to be part of a committee that the Congress has announced today looking at a roadmap for 2024. But will he actually join the party with a party post? That is an issue that the party is still quite divided over. But Sonia Gandhi is going to have the final say. The question, though, is will he be able to revive the Congress, which is besieged by a number of problems? We'll be looking at that story in just a few minutes from now. But first, our big focus tonight is the growing number of Indians who've actually stopped looking for jobs. We know we have an unemployment crisis in this country, but now we see that millions of Indians, particularly women, are exiting the labour force entirely. According to a new report prepared by the CMIE, which constantly looks at data around employment and unemployment, Indians are now frustrated at not being able to find the right kind of jobs. So essentially, they've stopped looking. They've said that between 2017 and 2022, the overall labour participation dropped from 46 to 40%, and that 21 million women have disappeared from the workforce completely in the last 5 years. Only 9% of eligible women in the population who are eligible to actually get jobs are employed at the moment. And as far as looking for jobs is concerned, over half of the 900 million Indians currently of legal working age just do not want jobs at the moment. Mahesh Vyas of the CMIE, he heads this group that looks at this data. He's joining us now on NDTV. Mahesh Vyas, thanks for being with us. Why is this happening? Why is it that more and more young Indians in particular don't seem to be wanting to look for jobs?
Well, I don't think the case is that they don't want to look for jobs. They have given up looking for jobs because there ain't enough jobs available. So surely there are jobs available, but they ain't enough in number and not for all kinds of people. So, for example, there is a great demand for IT people nowadays. There's such a big rush for IT professionals that you cannot find a person when you want one. But a large proportion, a large part of the working age population is unable to find a job in spite of sustained efforts to get one. And it is out of dejection that they leave the labor force.
I think what's particularly sad to see is that so many women have now disappeared from the workforce. Why is that happening with women in particular?
That's one of the biggest problems of India, that women don't participate adequately in the labor force in India. I think the reason again is the same as I said, mentioned earlier, that there ain't enough jobs. But for women, it gets particularly difficult because women prefer or would require jobs that are safer than could be considered for men, for example, require jobs that are closer to home. They would like to ensure that if the jobs are not very close to home, then the transportation is convenient and reliable. So the factors that go into bringing women into the labor force are a little more stringent, and I think we should make it easier for women to join the labor force, and the conditions are not conducive, not adequately conducive for a large number of them to join the labor force in a large part of the country. So Bombay, Delhi could be okay, but the large part of the remaining part of the country is not adequately good for women participation in the labor force.
So what explains, this jobs crisis? Because from the data, it's clear that this predates the pandemic. This is data that you've compiled from 2017. So what are the factors that have contributed to this largely?
So you see, we have been seeing this decline since the time we started compiling the data. We started compiling this data from January 2016. Since then, of course, the country has seen multiple economic shocks. So whether it is demonetization or a messy implementation of the GST, or it is the lockdown or multiple lockdowns. So all of these have made it increasingly more difficult for enterprise to set up large businesses, new capacities that can absorb new labor. So investments, which has been on a decline from 2011-12, has only worsened in recent times. So if investments don't happen, particularly in the private sector, then the quantities of job that you require, the numbers of jobs that we require will not happen. People will then want to get a government job because there are none available in the private sector, and the government cannot provide adequate jobs.
So what is the danger if this trend continues? Because it obviously isn't getting any better. What do you foresee in the short term and the long term?
Well, initially what happens is that as the number of people seeking jobs is far in excess of the number of jobs available, the wage rate comes down. So people will see jobs, but those jobs will give you lesser and lesser salaries or lesser and lesser income. So a small sliver, the IT professional types, will get a premium, but the rest of us all will get a big knockdown on our wage rates. So that's the first phase that pans out for a fairly long time, and then you will have civil unrest taking shape in different ways. There'll be more people at rallies, political rallies. There will be more instances of lawlessness. There will be more civil unrest, which will not be manifested in a manner to say this is because of unemployment, but unemployment is one of the factors that will exacerbate this.
So then quick last word, because that's pretty ominous what you're saying. I know it's easy to say, well, this should be done. But is it as simple as that, as just having more private investment to create more jobs?
Absolutely.
It is
we require an environment where private sector is enthused to set up new capacities that will absorb a lot of labor. I think if the government, and that's important, if the government can create a better enabling environment and not merely see the index of ease of business going up, which is not adequate, but to really give the confidence that private sector requires, something like the 91-92 magic, which said, we have faith in you, go invest, go grow, that's what we want you to do.
So why is the mood so down? Is it just the pandemic? Every time a budget speech happens, industry rates it 11 out of 10. We know they're lying most of the time, but what is it going to take to get that enthusiasm back, to create that environment?
Well, we need to have greater faith in the private sector than we have today. Failed businesses, for example, should not be called cheats. So businesses do fail, and non-performing assets can happen. So stigmatizing capitalists and capital is something that we should be very wary of. So that's the first most important thing. And the second thing is we should avoid as many shocks as possible. So demonetization was not a good idea. And some things we can't avoid, like lockdown obviously was largely unavoidable. But avoid economic shocks, have the economic environment largely predictable, and have more faith in the private sector.
All right, Mahesh, Vyas, thank you very much for joining us. That's an important report your group has put out, the CMIE. Let's see if any of that feedback actually resonates back to the top. Thank you. Well, moving on to the big political focus tonight, as I was saying right at the beginning, will Prashant Kishor be joining the Congress party? We certainly know he's going to play a big role. He's going to be part of an empowered group or committee that Sonia Gandhi has set up just today to look at the road ahead for the Congress party in 2024. But there are sharp divisions in the Congress over just how much of a free hand Kishor should be given. He is a star poll strategist, but there is a trust issue with him as well, because remember, he was the one who was in charge of Narendra Modi's 2014 campaign, and since then, he's worked across the political spectrum, often with the Congress party's rivals, which make many within the party wary of him, wary of trusting him, and of course, they're wary about their own positions and whether they will be relevant if he has a bigger say. But over the weekend, something happened which has annoyed a section of the Congress. Prashant Kishor's organization called IPAC signed a deal with the TRS in Telangana to handle their election campaign for 2023. And the TRS is a direct rival to the Congress in Telangana. Now, there are a lot of Congress leaders who are not happy with that. They say this proves their point that he can't be trusted. Others, though, believe that his analysis is data-driven. He says that he's not associated with IPAC any longer, but who are we kidding? We do know that this has been his baby for all these years. So even if he's not formally associated with it now, this was an organization that was inherently linked to him. So is PK the man who can turn things around for the Congress party? Is he the person who can help the Congress rise to the challenge it needs to rise to take on Narendra Modi and the BJP? We have a terrific panel tonight. Joining us this evening, Gurdeep Singh Sapal, Congress spokesperson, Swati Chaturvedi, author and columnist Sanjay Jha, former spokesperson of the Congress party, now very outspoken on what the party needs to do. We have Mr. Dilip Cherian also joining us tonight, and also from the TRS, Ravula Sridhar Reddy joining us tonight. Gurdeep Singh Sapal, let me ask you, because you're the official spokesperson of the Congress party, what does the party feel about, firstly, PK's ideas, his presentation? What have you been briefed about?
Well, it's in public domain that PK has made a presentation to the Congress party, and a team was constituted which has gone into the presentation in quite a detail, and the report has been submitted. And in next few days, it will be out what the official position is. But having said that, it is true that the Congress party is seriously looking into his suggestions and seriously looking into the role that he can play. And in next few days, we'll know. I can't disclose it today, what is the final outcome, because we don't know the final outcome as of now.
But what's the feeling? I mean, what are the sort of different views within the party on how much of a role he should play there?
Well, on TV, since the process is on, a democratic process is on, many senior leaders have been entrusted by the Congress president to go into the details. So it is very difficult to comment on your question on a television channel. But certainly in next few days, we'll be in a position to comment on it. Yes, it's a proposal. It's a serious proposal. The party has gone into it, into the details. The senior leaders have gone into detail. It's not about a magic wand or something like that you said in your introduction. It's part of a procedure. It's part of a larger plan that the party is now trying to introspect, come out, discuss within the party. The Chintan Shivar in Jaipur, in Udaipur is also part of that. This process is also part of that. So it's a whole integrated process which is being carried out now. Because we know that party needs to revamp. We know that we need to do many things now to come up with the challenge that party is facing today.
Okay, Sanjay Jha, you have batted very strongly actually, and you've written that, more than PK needing the Congress, it is the Congress that needs PK at this point. How do you, however, look at the misgivings that a section of the party has? How does PK sort of deal with the contradictions that emerged from, say, tying up with the TRS just yesterday and then possibly being part of the Congress tomorrow?
Well, I think, Nidhi, on the first part of your question, I think those who are going to oppose PK probably have their own personal existential crisis that is bigger than what the organization faces. It's for their own very narrow, selfish needs. I think insecurity in the Congress reigns very, very wide. And I think, the culture has been very reluctant to change. I mean, one of the reasons why the Congress has actually got self-decimated, in my opinion, is because it is a very slow party in terms of its reaction and reflexes. I mean, therefore, I have batted for PK for one reason. You need somebody to actually shake you up. I mean, this is a time for what you call as creative destruction in the corporate world or the management world. And the Congress needs a brutal shake-up. It has got ossified. It's literally like visiting a Jurassic Park. As far as, PK having worked with the BJP or TRS or Mamta Banerjee, etc., I think the only thing that the Congress can probably perhaps tell him is that if he has even an indirect stake in the IPAC venture, maybe he should not, or his organization should not engage with the BJP. I believe whether it's KCR or Mamta Banerjee, Sharad Pawar, Jagan Mohan Reddy, they're all part of the larger Congress umbrella. And I think eventually at some point, given the way things are going, the Congress will have to find an alignment or accommodation with these ex-regional blocks that the Congress had. So I do believe that his suggestions are pragmatic. And, Nidhi, I'll be very blunt on your show. The Congress leadership does not have, I think, confidence in many people because the culture has been one where people just are so paranoid about speaking truth to power that nobody ever really calls a spade a spade. I heard Mr. Digvijay Singh having an interview with you a couple of days ago, and I have great respect for Digvijay Singh. But I think there are times when you need to bite the bullet. I mean, this is the time where the Congress is virtually being extinguished.
All right. So you're saying it's now or never. It's do or die. This is it.
Yeah.
Swati Chaturvedi, your thoughts on that? Should the Congress trust him? Should the Congress just take a chance and go for it? What do you think?
Well, the Congress is probably going to go for him, Nidhi, but it's very, very dodgy. The whole thing is so dodgy now. Why did he go and spend this weekend with, KCR when he was kind of in a engagement with the Congress? I mean, he could be he says he's ideology agnostic, but he's being really politically promiscuous because the main rival of KCR is the Congress in Telangana. And if you notice, there's a whole pattern of the way PK has signed up with all of the Congress's opponents. He's publicly criticized the Gandhis, and currently, I've always said he's a man in a hurry. But this is a man in too much of a hurry. Because you can't be hopping across one day to Telangana, signing up an IPAC, and PK are not together. I mean, this is not even a good optics, because why was he lobbying for it for 2 days? He clearly has some role in the IPAC. The IPAC is his creation. And the Congress party is obviously upset because they're not taking a chance and saying that no, let's just jump into this. I mean, because of his hurry, I think he's kind of cleared the pitch for himself. He may still get into the Congress, but it's going to be on a very, very sour note now.
Even if he does. But the point is, Swati Chaturvedi, should the Congress take that chance on someone like him simply because nothing's working, right? So why not?
Well, nothing is working for the Congress, Nidhi, but the point is that, PK at best is a strategist. Now, a strategist does marketing. He does marketing for products. Now, when you have a good brand like Modi or Mamta, you add that extra 10%. You do campaigns, you do Chai Pe Charcha, you do whatever. But when you have Rahul Gandhi, now Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi last time, Priyanka's rate of success was 97%, the Congress lost its deposits in UP. Rahul Gandhi has lost the party to general elections. There have been 80 elections which they have fought under Rahul Gandhi, and, I don't even want to say what the record is. So when you keep trying to make Rahul Gandhi happen, is PK such a wizard? Is PK such a, spin? He's a spin doctor. I mean, how much can you spin Rahul Gandhi?
Oh, well, yes. I mean, to put it bluntly, perhaps that's true. But the person who is, before I come back to Gurdeep Sapal, Dilip Cherian, who's the original sort of guru on branding and marketing and all the rest of it, is that all you think that Prashant Kishor can sort of give to the Congress? He has shown a huge amount of success in difficult election campaigns over these years. But is he the right man for the Congress? Are they the right fit for each other, Dilip Cherian?
I think that there is very little choice the Congress has except to change the way it's working. Whether it is changing whether the Gandhis lead or not is only one of the issues. The point now is that you don't have ground troops for an election. And if Prashant Kishor has the ability to actually generate those ground troops, use professionals in those roles, and be able to do that, I think that's that's a gap that needs to be filled. Speed is, I think, of the essence. You cannot have endless discussions in committees to discuss all this. All this intelligence about whether Prashant Kishor is part of IPAC, is he going to be working with TRS or not, should have been gathered well before. Meaning, what are the so-called senior satraps or the junior satraps of the Congress doing? So the Congress only has itself to blame if it can't take these decisions quite simply. To answer the blunt question of do they need him, I think they need somebody. They need somebody to do the branding, they need somebody to do the spit and polish, they need somebody to do the groundwork, and they need somebody also to do the spin doctrine. Because whether we approve of what he says or not, Prashant Kishor gets them more airtime than almost any leader of theirs gets. So when he's talking, when he's rejecting, when he's being considered, the Congress party is in discussion. At other times, they are only being scoffed at.
That's true, actually. And someone interestingly mentioned the other day that the cadre, at least, or whatever's left of their cadre at the moment, is suddenly sort of interested in what's going on after a long period of slump. Now, whether it works or not, one doesn't know. But Mr. Reddy, your leader, Mr. KTR, today in an interview to my colleague Uma Sudhir, was very dismissive of PK's efforts to revive the Congress. He says he's latching onto a sick unit. If that's how the TRS feels, do you ever think that you all will come together under some larger friendly umbrella that Sanjay Jha is dreaming of?
I don't think so, because we are going to work with IPAC only as far as Telangana is concerned. And national perspective, it is too early to speak because now there are no parliament elections, and we are going to work with IPAC for Telangana state election, and Prashant Kishor is not with IPAC. He is free to take any of his decisions. And Congress party, they are gearing up to take him into the party. And our CM has relations with him for the last 7 years. He is in consultation with us for various things. But at this point in time, it is only confined to Telangana, and we will be working with IPAC. And Prashant is not with IPAC anymore. It's a professional and independent organization.
Well, that's interesting. You're making a distinction between just the state election and at the national level. Now, this is something that's been tried before. It's not always succeeded. It often just creates confusion in the opposition ranks, don't you think? If you're all fighting each other at the state level and then trying to come together at the national level?
No, definitely. We are for a strong national alternative. Our Honorable CM KCR has been speaking about it. He met many leaders at the national level. He met many chief ministers who really wanted a strong alternative at national level. But it is too early. See, Prashant may join Congress party. They are now, trying to understand whether that will add a lot of value to them. There is a section in Congress differing with their opinion. Okay, so it is too early for us to comment on that.
But
at this point
you're
in time,
comfortable if he's working with the Congress? You don't see a contradiction, conflict of interest, a conflict at all since he signed up with you?
No, IPAC, that's what I very clearly said. Even our working president KTR said, saying that IPAC is a different organization. It has no role, Prashant has no role in it now.
Why was he there over the weekend to meet KCR? What was he doing?
That's what our CM said. Prashant has been meeting us for the past 7-8 years. He has a larger understanding about the country's political system. We exchange views. That doesn't mean that we work with him completely. And his joining with Congress, his relationship with Congress or any other political party has nothing to do with our system in Telangana. To have a strong alternative at national level, anybody can, exchange views. Okay. Even Prakash Raj, kind of a political actor, has, keeps meeting our CM. Our Honorable CM met.
Just a coincidence that the deal also happened on the same weekend, but I'm leaving that aside for the moment. Swati Chaturvedi, just coming back to this point about trust. The Congress is a very difficult, old party. It is the grand old party. It has a 125 plus year history. Even if Prashant Kishor was to play some kind of a role, he is going to face a lot of headwinds, isn't he? And it's already started even before any formal joining.
Look, this is the original party of Darbar. The word came into being in current political lexicon because of the Congress party. There are inner Darbaris, there are outer Darbaris, there are courtiers galore. The important thing is that, Prashant Kishor, there are going to be two components to this. One is that if, it's like you get a McKinsey-like consultant who then, cuts your chaff and maybe, gets to 30% of the deadwood. And the Gandhi family looks good and Prashant Kishor looks like the executioner. Now that would be good from the optics of the Gandhi family, that they have somebody else is going to be the punching bag, which is going to be Prashant Kishor. But the ideological confusion, I think, is real because, you cannot not have an ideology. You cannot work with Modi for one election and then, work with Rahul Gandhi because, there is a huge ideological variance here. And Mr. Prashant Kishor wants to be in politics. He wants to be a politician. He no longer wants to be a spin doctor. He wants to be a leader. Now, when you want to be a leader, you can't be having sleepovers with, KCR, come back to Delhi and then become a congressman. What is your ideology? I mean, the Congress, at whatever state it is, if they're taking him in as a leader, they should expect a certain level of loyalty. You cannot be so promiscuous as to, an IPAC and PK not being together. It's like a mukhota. I mean, PK might be a mukhota for Rahul Gandhi and currently IPAC is a mukhota for PK.
Let me take that to Sanjay Jha. Does Swati have a point there about having an ideological commitment? Sanjay?
Nidhi, I don't agree with Swati at all. Firstly, I think it's rather presumptuous to believe that PK had a meeting with KCR, which was planned after his... No, just a minute. Hear me out, Swati. That I think these conversations, if one has been following in the media, he's been in touch with KCR for a long time. And maybe this meeting that happened or whatever is fructified has happened as a consequence of several subsequent meetings. So, I would rather look at it differently, that he's being so transparent. Now, what are we discussing here? We are saying here that Prashant Kishor is so duplicitous and so dubious and so brazen that he has meetings with the Congress, then he flies off to Hyderabad and does a shady deal with the TRS, which is kind of sending out a message that he is sleeping with both partners. I think that's a ridiculous charge. I think let's not be so cynical.
I'm not making that charge. It's reality. Exactly.
I'm just saying that let's not be so cynical and skeptical. As a Congress supporter, I can tell you this straightforward: the party needs a shake-up. It needs to wake up. Rip Van Winkle has been in a deep slumber for too long, and anyone who's critical of PK, I believe, is only going to further destroy the Congress.
Dilip Cherian, just a quick word on that, because if you look at the suggestions that Prashant Kishor has made in his presentations, even Congress leaders admit that a lot of this was, I mean, they know this, right? They know that they've lost their contact with the grassroots and that there is entitlement and sycophancy in the party. But is it necessary that only somebody like him can bring that change? Can they not realize it themselves?
I don't think they can realize it themselves. There are two reasons for this. One, they are never listened to. The people who want to critique are only writing notes which get put into files, which get discussed by committees and get destroyed by the system. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that there is no structure to this, because everybody who's making the criticism is doing it usually for personal vested interest. I've been ruled out, my uncle's been ruled out, Bob's the builder, that kind of problem. And I think that is what is holding the Congress back, and that is what is destroying them from within.
Let me ask Gurdeep Sapal the last question, because I think it's interesting that the Congress did send an official spokesperson on the program today. Mr. Sapal, what is the mood like? I mean, in the party, you've had all these election defeats all these years, but has all this buzz at least made you all a little excited about what could come, whichever way it goes?
No, I will not take your question the way you asked me. Many things which have been discussed in this program, in this show of yours, are in public domain. It's a fact that Congress has lost elections. It's a fact that IPAC is associated with Prashant Kishor in more than what we are speaking on this show, in more ways than that. We know that Congress has some shortcomings, and we know some areas need to be acted upon. All those information are in public domain. They are also available to Congress leadership and also the committee members who dealt with this entire proposal of Prashant Kishor. And they have been factored in. That is one part of it. And second part of it, as Swati said, true that Prashant Kishor is ideology agnostic. That's a fact. He himself says it. But Congress party is not ideology agnostic. In fact, it is the only party which has consistently taken a very clear-cut position against the idea of India, which is represented by RSS. It's the only party in India which has been fighting, and lot many negative results in last few years can be attributed to the stance taken by Congress party. We are not like Aam Aadmi party that you don't take up any position. So
you're saying that Prashant Kishor's lack of ideological commitment is an issue?
No, it's not an issue. What I am saying is these are issues which are known to the committee also, which are known to the Congress leadership also. They have been factored in. Issue is whether Congress party has to go ahead from here or not. Prashant Kishor is one of the factors. Chintan Shivar is other factor, and organizational changes all across is the third factor. And also social re-engineering, reaching out to OBCs, reaching out to Dalits, reaching out to farmers, reaching out to women is fourth part of it. So it is all put together. It's not one Prashant Kishor that it's about.
Interesting times ahead. Interesting times ahead. I have to leave it there. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. I invite you all back if and when that big joining in the Congress does finally happen. See you again tomorrow. Good night.